Long before cities and machines, the night sky ruled over every thought of our ancestors. Darkness was complete, fire was fragile, and above them hung the moon. To us, it may appear gentle, but to the first humans, it was not. It was a presence, cold and watchful, stirring fear they could not name. Imagine a small tribe gathered close to a fading fire. They raised their eyes and saw the pale light above. Sometimes it grew bright and round, sometimes it vanished into nothing, and sometimes it turned red as if the sky itself was bleeding. To them, the moon was alive, a spirit, a warning. Every change carried danger, and every silence demanded stories, because stories were less frightening than not knowing. That fear has never truly left us. Even now, under the full moon, we whisper about madness, wolves, and restless spirits. These legends are echoes from the first nights humanity trembled beneath the same sky. This is where our journey begins, the story of why the first humans feared the moon. If you enjoy stories that carry you into the mysteries of the past, remember to subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening right now? Is it deep in the night, or as the morning light touches your window? Your answer will become part of this story. The sky darkened. For the first humans, a lunar eclipse was unlike anything they had ever known. Night after night, they had watched the moon rise and fall, grow and shrink, appear and vanish. The changes had been unsettling, but the rhythm was steady enough to learn. The full moon came with brightness, the new moon with blackness. It was a cycle they began to expect. But then came nights when the rhythm was broken, when the moon itself seemed to die. These were the nights of the eclipse, when the earth's shadow swallowed the light above and transformed the familiar into terror. Imagine the scene. A group of families gather near their fire. The flames lick upward, throwing orange light into the cold air. Children curl close to their mothers, elders murmur softly, hunters rest their weapons across their knees. The full moon has risen, pale and strong. It has guided them through the early hours of the night, illuminating the ground and the trees, shining on their shelters. Then, without warning, a dark bite begins to eat into its edge. Slowly, silently, the bright circle becomes a crescent, then a sliver, and then nothing but a blood-red orb suspended above the earth. The moon no longer gives its cool silver glow. It burns instead like an open wound in the heavens. Every face turns upward, struck with fear. Every heart beats faster. No one speaks at first, because they cannot explain what they see. In their world, nothing could happen without meaning. The eclipse was not an accident of geometry, not the earth passing between sun and moon. It was a sign, an omen, a punishment. Some tribes imagined a beast devouring the moon, a serpent or jaguar climbing into the sky to feast upon its light. Others saw it as the anger of spirits, a reminder that the balance of life and death had been disturbed. Whatever the explanation, one feeling was shared by all: dread. The dread was not quiet. Once the first shock passed, voices rose. Elders shouted warnings, mothers clutched their children, hunters shouted at the sky. Drums beat, stones struck together, cries echoed through the night. They believed noise could drive the beast away, that if they shouted loud enough, if they beat their weapons against the ground, they could scare the darkness into retreat. The fire roared higher as more wood was thrown upon it, as if the light of the flames could help the wounded moon. Fear became action, and action became ritual. Generation after generation, the eclipse was met with clamor because silence felt like surrender. The memory of those nights stayed long after the shadow lifted. When the moon returned, pale once more, it was greeted with relief, even joy. People danced, embraced, sang to the sky, but the joy carried the echo of fear. The eclipse had revealed how fragile the world was, how quickly the steady rhythm could shatter. If the moon could vanish, then perhaps everything could vanish. If the sky itself could bleed, then nothing on earth was safe. Stories grew around these events. Children were told never to look directly at the eclipse, lest they invite sickness or blindness. Pregnant women were hidden indoors because the red light was believed to curse unborn children. Warriors were told that an eclipse foretold death in battle. Farmers were told that it predicted famine. The eclipse was a blank canvas, and onto it they painted every terror they knew. Each new story made the fear heavier, and the fear in turn made the stories spread. In this way, the eclipse became more than a natural event. It became a cultural wound. Anthropologists who study later civilizations still find the echoes of this terror. In ancient Mesopotamia, people believed an eclipse foretold the death of a king. To protect their rulers, they placed substitutes on the throne during eclipses, men who lived like kings for a day before being executed, while the true monarch hid away. In China, early records speak of dragons that devoured the moon, with citizens ordered to bang pots and fire arrows into the sky to save it. In the Americas, the Maya and the Inca also saw eclipses as battles in the heavens, moments of danger that demanded offerings. These beliefs may have evolved, but their roots stretch back to those first nights when our ancestors trembled under a sky gone red. Imagine again those nights, the cold ground beneath your feet, the fire snapping, the air filled with cries. You lift your eyes and the moon that was once steady is now bleeding. Its light no longer protects you, its face no longer familiar. You feel abandoned. The spirits you hoped were watching now seem angry. The ancestors you prayed to are silent. You are small, weak, and lost beneath a sky that has betrayed you. Fear spreads like smoke, filling your chest, tightening your throat. You shout because you must. You shout because silence would mean surrender to forces too vast to fight. Not every eclipse was met with panic. Some groups tried to prepare. Elders who had lived long enough remembered the cycle. They noticed that after the red moon came back, life continued. They began to predict the return, to reassure the frightened. But reassurance never erased fear. Each eclipse was still a crack in the sky, still a reminder of fragility. The fact that it always ended did not weaken the terror. It only deepened the mystery. Why did the moon allow itself to be eaten? Why did it return? Who decided when it would happen? These questions carried no answers, and so they grew heavier with each telling. The eclipse shaped rituals of power. Leaders used it as proof of their connection to the divine. A shaman might claim he could bring the moon back through chance. A chief might order sacrifices to appease the sky. The fear became a tool, binding the tribe together under authority. People obeyed not only because they feared their leaders, but because they feared the heavens. In this way, the eclipse gave rise to structure, hierarchy, and control. Terror became order. It is easy to imagine how such nights left scars in human memory. For most of history, humans passed knowledge through stories, not writing. Stories were sticky. They clung to the mind, repeated again and again around fires. The tale of the moon's death was too powerful to fade. It was repeated so often that it became part of the collective memory, passed down through language, through myth, through blood. Even today, when science explains everything, the sight of a lunar eclipse can stir unease. Cameras click, people marvel, but deep in the chest there remains a whisper of ancient fear. This fear was not foolish, it was adaptive. To fear the eclipse was to respect the unknown. It kept people cautious, kept them listening, kept them aware of forces larger than themselves. Fear preserved life. Better to tremble at a shadow than to ignore it and risk destruction. In this way, the eclipse shaped not only mythology, but survival itself. And so, the eclipse became one of the earliest high dramas of human existence. The sky itself staged the play. The moon was the actor, the earth was the curtain, and humanity was the audience. Each performance was terrifying, but each also carried the lesson that the world was unpredictable, that power lay beyond human control. These lessons sank deep, forming the foundation of how people saw their place in the cosmos. When we look back now, across the thousands of years, we can still picture those nights. The red moon burning, the people shouting, the fires blazing higher. We can almost hear the fear in their voices, feel the chill in their bones, sense the desperation in their eyes. And when the shadow passed and the pale light returned, we can feel the release, the relief, the fragile joy. The moon had died, and yet it lived again. Humanity survived another night, another terror, another reminder of its own smallness. The night had darkened, the moon had bled, and in that moment, the first humans learned what it meant to fear the sky. Blood flows. From the very beginning, humanity saw the connection between the moon and blood. The cycles of the moon marked the cycles of life, and no cycle was more obvious than that of the human body. Month after month, women bled with a rhythm that echoed the waxing and waning of the lunar face. The two became entwined in imagination and in fear. To the first humans, this was not coincidence. It was proof that the moon was alive, that it had power over the body, over fertility, over death. Imagine the small community of an early tribe. Fires burn low at the edges of their camp. Above them the moon rises, pale and unblinking. A woman sits apart, her body weary, her blood marking the earth beneath her. Others keep their distance, uncertain, anxious. They whisper of spirits that pass between her and the moon, spirits that drink the blood, spirits that demand it. For them, blood is not only life, but also danger. It attracts predators. It carries scent. It flows when there is injury and when there is birth. To see it in rhythm with the moon was to believe the heavens controlled even the deepest secrets of flesh. The red moon of an eclipse only strengthened this belief. When the sky bled, so too did the earth. The omen was clear. Blood above meant blood below. A red moon could foretell war, famine, plague. It could mean children lost, mothers dead in childbirth, warriors slain in battle. In the collective mind, the moon's redness was the mirror of human suffering. Each drop of blood shed on earth seemed tied to the stain above. Stories grew quickly. The elders told that when the moon turned red, the gods demanded offerings. They demanded the blood of animals, sometimes of humans. Tribes gathered to sacrifice goats, deer, even their own kin, believing the flow of blood on the ground would heal the wound in the sky. The ritual was desperate but powerful. It gave them a sense of agency. If they bled for the moon, perhaps the moon would bleed less for them. Over time, the bond between moon and blood shaped ritual life. Women were secluded during their cycles, hidden away in special shelters, believed to be closer to the moon than the rest. Some were feared as dangerous, others revered as sacred. Menstruation became both taboo and holy, a mark of danger and of life. The moon became the great clock of reproduction, the keeper of fertility, the reminder that life could only continue through blood. Imagine again the camp of an ancient tribe. A child is born beneath a full moon. The mother cries out, her body torn, blood pooling beneath her. Around her, the tribe prays. Some see the full moon as blessing, others as threat. They believe the light above will shape the child's destiny. If the moon shines bright, the child may live strong. If it fades too soon, the child may not survive. Blood on the ground, light in the sky, one mirrored the other. This connection was not only ritual, but survival. Blood meant food as well. Hunters knew that blood attracted predators, but it also marked success. A kill meant red on their hands, red on the soil, red against the moonlit ground. They lifted their eyes to the sky and saw the red of the moon reflected in their own work. It became impossible to separate the two. Blood was life and death. The moon was life and death. Together they created the rhythm of survival. Later cultures preserved this link. In Mesopotamia, eclipses were connected to sacrifice. In Mesoamerica, the Aztec believed the moon goddess demanded blood to keep balance in the cosmos. In Africa, tribes feared that women's cycles drew down the moon's power, making them vulnerable to spirits. Across the world, the association held. The moon commanded blood, and blood answered. The image of the red moon became especially powerful. Poets and priests alike described it as a wound in the sky. It was the mirror of human mortality. When the moon bled, it was as if the heavens reminded humankind of its fragile flesh. Each cut, each wound, each childbirth, each death was written above in that crimson glow. To live beneath it was to be reminded constantly of the body, of its weakness, of its inevitable end. Fear deepened when war came. Under a red moon, warriors marched, believing the heavens demanded sacrifice. Some cultures timed battles to the cycle of the moon, interpreting its color as approval or warning. Blood spilled on the battlefield felt destined when the moon watched overhead. The dead lay with eyes open, faces turned upward to the light that judged them. Survivors whispered that the moon had chosen who lived and who died. But not all interpretations were grim. In some places, the red moon was fertility itself, a promise of crops and children. Blood was not only death, but also renewal. Seeds were placed in soil stained with blood, offerings made to ensure growth. Birth under a red moon was celebrated as a sign of strength. Yet even in these moments, the awe was heavy. No one could see the red moon without trembling, whether from hope or fear. Imagine a hunter alone in the forest. The moon rises and it is red. He crouches low, heart pounding. He thinks of the prey he seeks, but he also thinks of his own life. He wonders if he will return. The color above tells him that blood must flow tonight. Perhaps it will be the deer's, perhaps his own. Each step he takes is heavy, his eyes flicking between the ground and the sky, caught between survival and surrender. Generations of fear and reverence layered themselves into culture. Songs spoke of the moon as mother, as sister, as enemy. Chants tied fertility to its cycles. Myths told of women transformed into lunar goddesses, bleeding each month to keep balance in the world. Priests marked the calendar by its phases. Kings ordered sacrifices when it turned red. The moon and blood were inseparable in imagination. One could not be spoken of without the other. As centuries passed, the stories remained. Even now, in many languages, words for time and cycle are tied to the moon. Words for month echo lunar rhythm. The female body is still called lunar in its cycle. Doctors explain the science, but culture remembers the myth. The sight of a red moon still stirs ancient memory. It still carries the weight of omen, the taste of blood, the echo of sacrifice. The bond between the moon and blood shaped how humans saw themselves. It reminded them that their bodies were fragile, bound to forces they could not control. It taught them that survival required respect, that life came only through struggle, that each drop of blood connected them to the sky. It was not only myth, but identity, not only fear, but truth. The moon bled, the body bled, and in that symmetry, humankind found meaning. So when the moon turned red, the first humans trembled. They whispered prayers, they made sacrifices, they drew connections. They saw in the sky the reflection of their own flesh, their own pain, their own hope. Blood above, blood below, one feeding the other. And when the moon returned to silver, they exhaled, knowing the balance had been restored, at least for a while. Blood flows. And beneath the moon, humanity learned to fear it, to honor it, and to live by it. Fear ruled. For many early tribes, the moon was not only a distant presence in the sky, it was the very center of their lives, their rituals, and their choices. They believed its light carried power. They believed its phases carried warnings. They believed that if they failed to respect it, disaster would fall upon them. Some tribes lived with this fear so deeply that every action was shaped by the moon. Imagine a camp of huts made from branches and hides. Smoke curls upward from the fires. The air smells of meat and ash. In the middle sits the elder, his hair silver in the moonlight. Around him, families gather, waiting for his words. The full moon has risen, and everyone knows what that means. It is a night of rules. Children are not allowed to wander. Couples are forbidden from lying together. No one leaves the circle of huts. The moon is watching. If anyone disobeys, the elder warns, the spirits will punish them. Such prohibitions were not rare. Across the world, tribes imposed strict laws during certain phases of the moon. Some believed that during the full moon, evil spirits roamed freely. Others believed that during the dark moon, ancestors tested the living. To protect themselves, they restricted movement, banned food, or required silence. Fear turned into law, and law turned into tradition. At times, the fear took darker forms. When famine struck or disease spread, people looked upward for answers. If the moon was red, or if its light seemed dim, the conclusion was simple. Someone had angered the sky. To restore balance, sacrifices were made. Sometimes animals were offered, sometimes people. The weakest were chosen: children, the elderly, the sick. Their blood was spilled in ceremonies meant to appease the moon. The tribe believed that by giving life, they could calm the wrath of the heavens. Picture the scene of such a ritual. Torches blaze around a clearing, shadows stretch long across the ground, drums pound in rhythm with the heartbeat of the tribe. In the center stands the chosen sacrifice, trembling. The elder lifts his arms and calls to the moon, begging for mercy. Then the blade falls and the ground drinks the blood. The people cry out, not only in grief, but also in relief. They believe the moon has been fed, that it will once again shine with favor. The fear does not vanish, but it is soothed, at least for a time. Fear also controlled the rhythms of daily life. Some tribes refused to hunt during full moons, believing that animals were possessed by spirits. Others refused to plant crops during dark moons, believing the seeds would rot. Even the simple act of walking outside could be forbidden. The night was filled with rules, and the rules were enforced by fear. This fear was not only collective, but deeply personal. A woman who bled during a full moon might be accused of cursing the tribe. A child born under a red moon might be feared as a bad omen. A hunter who broke taboo might be blamed for sickness. The moon provided explanation for misfortune, and explanations demanded punishment. Social order was built on fear, and the moon was its judge. Over generations, these customs hardened. What began as whispers turned into laws. What began as fear turned into dogma. People did not even question why. They obeyed because their ancestors obeyed. They obeyed because the cost of disobedience was too high. They obeyed because the night sky was too vast to challenge. It is important to imagine the weight of this fear. Every glance at the moon was loaded with meaning. Every change in its light could shift the fate of the tribe. The moon was not distant. It was intimate, like a presence that lived among them. It shone into their huts, lit their paths, watched their dreams. It was always there, silent but demanding, cold but powerful. Some tribes tried to transform the fear into reverence. They built rituals of song and dance, celebrating the moon as goddess or god. They painted its face on rocks, carved its image into wood, carried amulets that held its power. But even in worship, fear lingered. Worship was not love, it was submission. It was bargaining with a force too strong to resist. The fear could divide tribes as well. A famine would strike, and one group would blame another. Accusations would fly that someone had broken a lunar law, that someone had brought anger upon them. Families were torn apart, friends turned into enemies, all because of the light in the sky. The moon was not only a celestial body, it was a weapon used to explain, to accuse, to control. Imagine a night when the moon rose red. A tribe gathers, tense and anxious. The elder declares that someone must be chosen. Fingers point. A name is spoken. A boy is dragged forward, his cries piercing the air. The tribe watches as he is offered to the sky. In that moment, unity is restored. The fear of the moon is transformed into fear of disobedience. To resist is to risk becoming the next sacrifice. The cycle continues. We may shudder at these rituals, but they made sense to those who lived them. Without science, without knowledge, survival required meaning. The moon provided that meaning. It was the mirror in which they saw both their fragility and their hope. By fearing it, they gave structure to chaos. By obeying it, they gave order to the unknown. Fear was not only a burden, it was a tool of survival. Over time, as humans gathered into larger societies, the fear evolved. It became mythology, religion, culture. The sacrifices did not end, but they were woven into more elaborate rituals. The prohibitions did not vanish, but they became law. What was once the dread of a small tribe became the faith of a civilization. The moon continued to rule, not through its light, but through its meaning. And so, entire tribes lived under eternal fear. Every night they looked upward and saw judgment. Every ritual, every law, every sacrifice was shaped by the face of the moon. To live was to obey it. To disobey was to invite disaster. They lived not only on earth, but also under the gaze of the sky, small bodies beneath a vast and silent watcher. Fear ruled. And in that fear, humanity built the first steps of order, of myth, and of meaning. The moon revealed. For early humans, the moon was not only a light in the sky, it was a lamp that turned the night into danger. Its pale glow stretched across plains, forests, and rivers, exposing everything beneath it. Where the fire's light ended, the moon's light began, and in that space lurked predators. Lions, wolves, leopards, hyenas, and countless others used the night as their ally. To them, the moon was not an enemy, but a helper. It allowed them to see, it allowed them to hunt. And for humans, that meant exposure, vulnerability, and fear. Imagine a family huddled together in a small shelter made of branches and hides. They whisper softly, their voices trembling, as they hear the rustle of grass outside. The fire burns low, barely more than embers. Beyond its circle of light, the ground glows silver under the full moon. Shadows move at the edge of sight. A lion steps into the open, its mane pale under the sky. Its eyes catch the moonlight, gleaming like coals. The family freezes. They know the fire may not be enough. They know the moon has betrayed them, showing their position to the predator. For predators, the full moon was a time of advantage. Studies of animal behavior today show that many species hunt more successfully during bright nights. Their prey is easier to spot. The open plains that once offered some protection to humans became traps lit by silver glow. Every movement, every shadow, every breath could be seen. The moon turned the night into a stage, and humans were often the prey. Fear of predators was instinctive. The growl of a lion, the howl of a wolf, the shriek of a hunting owl, all these sounds carried deeper meaning under moonlight. They were amplified by the silence of the night and the vastness of the sky. A single cry could make an entire tribe tense, eyes darting upward and outward, searching the edges of the light. The moon turned sounds into omens. This fear shaped behavior. Many tribes refused to travel under the full moon. They hid in caves or clustered tightly around fires, choosing the suffocating smoke of wood over the open danger outside. Hunters timed their expeditions with the phases of the moon, avoiding nights when predators prowled most actively. The moon was not only a clock of time, but also a calendar of fear. Stories grew around these dangers. Children were told that wolves were children of the moon, that lions carried its spirit in their eyes, that hyenas laughed with its voice. Predators became lunar creatures, servants of the light above. To disobey the rules of the moon was to invite these hunters into the camp. The myths gave shape to fear, and fear kept the people alive. Imagine again the hunt. A group of men stalk through tall grass, spears in hand. The moon hangs full and bright. The air is heavy, every sound sharp. Suddenly, from the shadows, eyes flash. A leopard leaps, silent and deadly. The men scatter, shouting, their spears striking the air. In the end, one of them falls, his body broken beneath claws. The others drag him back to camp, eyes wide with terror. They tell their children that the moon had chosen a sacrifice, that under its gaze someone must bleed. Predators were not only physical, but spiritual. Many tribes believed that spirits of the dead roamed during full moons, taking the form of animals. To hear the cry of an owl or the howl of a wolf was to hear a soul lost between worlds. These beliefs gave weight to the danger. The moon did not only expose humans to beasts of flesh, it exposed them to beasts of spirit, unseen but no less feared. The connection between predators and moonlight became part of collective memory. It is no accident that in later cultures, wolves were tied to the full moon, that werewolves were said to transform under its glow, that witches were believed to gather when the moon was bright. These legends are echoes of nights when humans cowered in fear, listening to predators stalk through the silver-lit dark. Consider the silence after an attack. The moon shines down, indifferent. Blood stains the ground, bodies lie still, and the predators vanish back into the shadows. The survivors sit in silence, staring upward. The moon does not comfort them. It does not mourn. It shines coldly, as if nothing has happened. This indifference was perhaps the most frightening of all. The The moon lit both predator and prey, life and death, without choosing sides. It watched, but it never acted. It illuminated the terror, but it never removed it. Over time, humans tried to reclaim some control. They built stronger shelters, lit larger fires, posted guards at night. But even with these protections, the fear remained. The moon could not be stopped, and predators could not be silenced. The rhythm of survival continued. Some nights were safe, others were filled with screams, but always the moon was above, turning the night into a stage for the drama of life and death. Predators in the moonlight shaped the imagination of humankind. They reminded humans of their vulnerability, of their smallness in the order of nature. They taught caution, vigilance, and respect for the wild. They carved themselves into the myths and legends that still live today. And in the quiet of the night, under the glow of the full moon, that fear can still be felt. The rustle of leaves, the cry of a distant animal, the shadows that shift at the edge of sight, all remind us of the nights when the moon revealed us, and predators came. The moon revealed, and beneath its light, humanity trembled, hunted, and survived. The sky taught. For the earliest humans, the heavens above were not silent. They spoke through light and shadow, through cycles of sun and moon, through stars that wheeled in patterns across the black. In a world without writing, without scrolls or stone tablets, the sky became the first textbook. Each night was a page. Each phase of the moon was a lesson. Each constellation was a story. Through this great book, humanity began to learn the rhythms of survival. Imagine a small band gathered on a grassy plain. They sit together as the fire fades, their eyes lifting upward. Above them spreads a canopy of stars, so thick it seems like dust. The moon climbs, round and steady, then slips slowly through its cycle. The elders point, tracing arcs with their hands. They tell the young when the animals will move, when the rains will come, when it is time to plant or harvest. None of these lessons are written. They are remembered, recited, repeated, carried forward in minds alone. The sky is the teacher, and memory is the student. The moon was at the center of this education. Its waxing and waning gave time shape. Days by themselves were fleeting, too easily lost in the blur of sunrises and sunsets. But the moon provided a measure, a visible clock hanging in the heavens. From new to full and back again, it marked a cycle humans could count. They could tie hunting expeditions to its brightness, gathering to its dark, rituals to its return. Month after month, the moon gave structure to chaos. The stars offered guidance as well. Constellations rose and fell with the seasons, signaling migration routes for both animals and people. A cluster of stars might tell a tribe when the fish would return to rivers. Another might mark the time when herds moved across plains. Still another told when winter was near, urging preparation. The night sky was a map, not only of space, but of time. It was the first chart, the first compass, the first calendar. This education was not free from fear. Knowledge was wrapped in awe. When the moon disappeared during an eclipse, the lesson was of fragility. When stars vanished behind clouds, the lesson was of uncertainty. When comets streaked across the black, the lesson was of disruption. Each new phenomenon was interpreted not simply as a fact, but as a message. The sky never spoke without meaning. To ignore it was to risk disaster. Over generations, these observations hardened into traditions. A tribe might declare that planting must begin with the crescent moon, that marriages must occur under a full moon, that journeys must wait until the moon was half. These rules gave structure not only to survival, but also to society. They bound people together under shared rhythms. To follow the sky was to belong. To reject it was to step outside the tribe into chaos. Consider the act of storytelling. Around the fire, elders spoke of animals in the sky, hunters chasing prey, mothers cradling children, gods throwing spears of light. These were not idle fables. They were memory aids. By tying survival lessons to story, they made them unforgettable. Children learned to fear the dark moon because it was when monsters prowled. They learned to watch for certain constellations because they were hunters guiding them. The myth carried the lesson, and the lesson ensured survival. The sky was also the first judge. If a crop failed, people looked upward for blame. If a hunt ended in tragedy, they blamed the phases of the moon. If war came, the stars were said to have foretold it. The sky explained what the earth could not. It provided cause where none could be seen. This gave comfort, but it also deepened fear. To live under the prehistoric sky was to live under constant judgment, as if the heavens themselves kept score. Yet even with this burden, the sky gave wonder. To stand beneath it was to feel small, but also connected. The patterns overhead tied each person to something larger. The same moon rose for every tribe. The same stars turned above every fire. The same eclipses terrified and awed across continents. In this way, the sky united humanity in shared experience long before language or trade connected them. It was the common book, written in light, read by all. Imagine lying on your back in the grass of a quiet plain. The fire has burned down, the air is cool, the world is silent, except for insects and wind. Above you, the Milky Way spills across the night. The moon drifts slowly, pulling shadows behind it. You feel the weight of knowledge pressing down, knowledge not of words but of patterns. You sense the ancestors who watched the same sky, who told the same stories, who measured their lives by the same cycles. The prehistoric sky is their voice, still speaking, still teaching. And so humanity learned, not from books or teachers, but from stars and moon, from darkness and light. The sky was the first textbook, and its lessons shaped not only survival, but imagination. It taught fear and wonder, caution and hope, rhythm and meaning. Beneath it, humans found their place, fragile yet enduring, small yet aware. The sky taught, and humanity listened. Stories grew. In the earliest nights, fear of the moon was instinctive, raw, and overwhelming. But fear alone could not last forever. It had to be shaped, explained, carried forward in a form that children could understand and adults could repeat. Out of fear came story, and out of story came myth. In this way, the dread of the moon became something larger, something shared, something that reached across generations. Imagine a fire burning in the center of a camp. Around it, families sit close, wrapped in furs. The children watch the elder, his face lined with years, his voice low and steady. Above them, the moon hangs, full and bright. The elder begins to speak. He tells of a great beast that swallows the moon, a serpent that rises from the earth each month to eat its light. He tells of warriors in the sky who fight to free it, who bleed so that the moon may shine again. The children listen, eyes wide, and the fear that once silenced them becomes a story that explains the unknown. Such stories were not entertainment, they were tools of survival. A tale that described a monster swallowing the moon also reminded people that eclipses were dangerous. A tale of gods punishing those who disobeyed the lunar cycle reinforced rules that kept order. Myths served as memory, making sure that the lessons of fear were never lost. Over time, these myths grew more elaborate. The moon became a goddess in some places, a god in others, a powerful spirit that demanded respect. It was said to control fertility, to govern tides, to shape fate. People prayed to it for children, for safety, for guidance. Temples were aligned to its rise and fall. Altars were built in its honor. The moon was no longer just a light. It was a deity, watching and judging. The myths also gave form to the animals of fear. Wolves howling at the moon became more than a sound of the night. They became symbols of transformation, creatures who crossed the boundary between human and beast under lunar glow. Owls that called in the darkness became messengers of death, their voices tied to the will of the moon. Each predator, seen under silver light, became part of the myth, not only physical but spiritual. In these stories, humans found both explanation and comfort. If the moon was a god, then perhaps its anger could be soothed. If it was a spirit, perhaps it could be bargained with. Fear turned into ritual. Ritual turned into worship. Worship turned into religion. The myths that began as whispered tales around fires became the foundations of belief. Imagine again the scene of a red eclipse. Instead of panic alone, the tribe gathers in ritual. Drums beat, voices rise and chant, sacrifices are made. The people believe they are helping the moon, that their blood and noise will bring back its light. The fear is still there, but it is organized. It is no longer chaos. It is myth, structured and repeated, carried forward as tradition. As societies grew, the myths spread wider. Traders carried stories of moon gods and goddesses across deserts and seas. Warriors brought tales of lunar omens to new lands. Priests codified lunar laws, tying them to the cycles of agriculture, marriage, and war. The moon became a shared myth, binding people across distances. Its face was the same to all, and so its myths could travel where people traveled. Some myths were dark. They told of curses, of madness, of spirits who walked under the full moon. They told of humans transformed into beasts, of witches who gathered under silver light. These myths carried the weight of fear, reminding people that the moon was dangerous, that it revealed what should remain hidden. Other myths were gentle. They told of lovers separated by fate, one trapped in the moon, the other wandering the earth. They told of mothers who became lunar goddesses, watching over their children from above. These myths carried comfort, turning fear into beauty. Through all of them, the original fear remained. The myths did not erase it. They carried it, preserved it, transformed it. Fear of the moon became the story of the moon, and the story became the myth of the moon. And myth, unlike fear, could endure forever. The power of myth was not only in its words, but in its rituals. People danced under the moon, painted its image on cave walls, carved it into stone. They carried amulets shaped like crescents, wore charms blessed under lunar light, buried their dead with offerings to the moon. Each act reinforced the myth. Each act reminded them that the sky was not empty, but alive. Over centuries, these myths blended with others. Sun and moon became siblings, lovers, rivals. Stars became their children. Eclipses became battles between them. The sky turned into a great stage of divine drama, where every light carried story. For the people below, life was shaped not only by hunger and cold, but also by narrative. To live was to be part of the myth. Imagine a child falling asleep to the sound of a story about the moon. She dreams of silver rivers, of gods in the sky, of animals with human voices. She wakes the next morning with the image still in her mind. She grows up believing in the power of the moon, shaping her choices by its phases. When she becomes an elder, she tells the same story to her own children. The myth survives, carried on the breath of generations. In this way, fear became culture. What began as trembling in the night became words, became ritual, became belief. The moon, once only a source of dread, became one of the great symbols of humanity. It inspired art, song, religion, and law. It shaped imagination as much as it shaped survival. Stories grew. And from those stories, the myths of the moon were born. Myths that still echo in our world today. Myths that remind us of the nights when fear first looked upward and found a face in the sky. The fire grew. From the earliest sparks struck between stones, humans discovered a weapon against the fear of the night. Fire was fragile at first, a flicker barely strong enough to hold back shadows, but it was also power, and in its light, the grip of the moon loosened. The fear that once belonged entirely to the sky began to share space with the flame. Humanity's slow mastery of darkness began with this fragile light. Imagine a night before fire. The tribe huddles together, pressed close for warmth. The moon glows above, exposing them to predators, to spirits, to the vastness of the sky. They are silent, helpless, waiting for the night to end. Now imagine a night after fire. Flames dance upward, sparks rise into the air, and the circle of light pushes the shadows back. The people sit straighter, they speak, they laugh, they cook, they dream. Fire changes everything. The moon did not vanish from their fears, but its power diminished. Fire became a second light, one that humans could control. They could feed it, shape it, carry it. They could choose when to let it die and when to bring it back. For the first time, they had a force that rivaled the glow of the heavens. The prehistoric sky still ruled, but the earth now answered with its own flame. Over time, fire grew from a spark into a torch, from a torch into a hearth, from a hearth into a bonfire. Villages glowed against the night, their fires flickering like stars fallen to the ground. Each flame was a declaration. Humans would not surrender completely to darkness. They would create their own day inside the night. This mastery shifted myth. Where once the moon was the sole guardian of the dark, fire joined it. Stories arose of gods who stole fire from the heavens, who gave it to humans as a gift against fear. In these tales, the balance between earth and sky changed. The moon was still revered, still feared, but it was no longer alone. Humanity had taken some of its power. Imagine a ritual where the moon is full. Instead of cowering, the tribe gathers around a massive fire. They chant, they dance, their shadows leaping against the trees. The fire roars louder than their voices, brighter than the moon above. They believe the flames are alive, that they speak back to the sky, that they keep predators and spirits away. For the first time, the fear of the moon is answered with defiance. This defiance grew stronger with new inventions. Torches allowed people to move beyond the safety of the camp. Hunters carried fire into forests, travelers carried it across plains. The moon no longer dictated when they could leave or return. The circle of firelight became a moving shield, a portable piece of the sun. Darkness was still vast, but it could be challenged. Later came lamps, oils, and fires built from stone hearths. Each innovation gave humans more control. Night no longer belonged solely to predators. It no longer belonged solely to the moon. Villages gleamed, rituals glowed, and families sat around fires telling stories long after the sun had set. The prehistoric textbook of the sky remained important, but it now shared its lessons with the flame. The myths changed again. The moon was no longer only a god to be feared, it became a companion to fire. Some stories said the moon envied fire, others that it blessed it. Some said fire was a gift stolen from the moon itself. In every version, humanity's place shifted. They were no longer helpless beneath the heavens. They were partners in the balance of light and dark. Imagine walking through a village at night thousands of years ago. Fires burn at every doorway. Torches mark the paths. Children laugh, elders talk, hunters sharpen weapons. The moon shines above, but it no longer terrifies. It glows, distant and pale, while the fires blaze warm and close. The night feels different. It feels human. This change did not erase fear entirely. Eclipses still brought terror. Red moons still stirred dread. But the constant presence of fire softened the blow. People could huddle by their hearths, reassure themselves with flame. They could believe that their own light was enough to keep balance. The moon no longer had absolute power over their nights. As centuries passed, this mastery grew into cities. Streets were lined with torches, temples with braziers, palaces with eternal flames. Fire became not only survival but symbol. It stood for knowledge, for civilization, for control of nature. And always it stood against the night, against the cold silver of the moon. Yet the relationship was not one of replacement. The moon still mattered, farmers still planted by its phases, priests still read omens in its face, lovers still whispered under its glow. But fear of it was no longer paralyzing. Fire had given humanity a second anchor. The night sky was still vast, but it was no longer everything. Humans had created their own center. Imagine again the elder by the fire. He tells stories of gods and beasts, of spirits and ancestors. But now his face is lit from below, his features alive in the flames. The children watch the fire as much as the moon. Their fears are divided, their wonder is shared. In the dance of sparks and shadows, they see a future where humanity writes its own myths, not only beneath the moon, but beside the fire. The fire grew, and with it, humanity took its first true step out of fear, mastering the darkness that once belonged only to the moon. The fear remained, even as fire spread through villages, even as cities rose with lamps lining their streets, even as science began to explain the movements of the heavens. The fear of the moon never fully vanished. It shifted, it changed shape, it hid itself in myths and in language, but it endured. The first humans may have trembled openly beneath the silver light, but their descendants carried the trembling inside. It became part of the collective memory, a shadow in the mind that lingered long after the night had ended. Consider the word lunacy. In many languages, madness has long been tied to the moon. A full moon was believed to stir restlessness, to unchain wild impulses, to make people howl and wander in the dark. Doctors of the Middle Ages wrote that seizures, fevers, and madness all worsened when the moon was full. Even today, whispers remain that crime and violence rise with the full moon, that hospitals see more patients, that sleepless nights are more common. The evidence may be debated, but the belief itself is ancient. It is the psychological echo of those first nights of fear. The association between the moon and transformation is equally deep. Legends of werewolves are found across Europe, but their roots stretch back to older fears. To see an animal's eyes glow in moonlight was to believe it was more than animal, that the light itself had transformed it. The line between man and beast blurred under the full moon. The myth of the werewolf is not random fantasy. It is a story built from the memory of predators stalking silver-lit fields, from the dread of being hunted while the sky watched silently. Other legends tied witches to the moon. Nights of the full moon were said to be times of gathering, of rituals and spells, of spirits called forth by lunar power. The moon gave them strength, just as it gave predators light. To accuse someone of witchcraft was often to accuse them of walking with the moon, of drawing on its dangerous energy. These stories reveal the same psychological truth, that the moon was never trusted fully, that its light was always a double-edged gift. The fear also seeped into dreams. Across cultures, to dream of the moon was to dream of change, of loss, of warning. The waxing moon meant growth, the waning moon meant decline, the red moon meant death. People saw omens in their sleep, their subconscious echoing the ancient terrors of their ancestors. Even in the silence of their minds, the moon whispered. This legacy shaped rituals of protection. People carried charms against moonlight, avoided sleeping beneath open skies, covered the faces of infants when the moon was full. They believed its gaze could weaken the body, steal the soul, or curse the child. The fear was not only cultural, but bodily, felt deep in the chest as unease, in the skin as a chill, in the mind as a restless thought that refused to sleep. Imagine a medieval village. The streets are dark, the only lights are candles in windows. The full moon rises above the roofs, pale and round. Dogs begin to bark. Somewhere a woman cries out, claiming to see shadows move across the fields. Men gather with weapons, whispering that witches roam. Children press close to their mothers, unable to rest. The fear of the prehistoric night still rules, only now dressed in different clothes. Even in modern times, the fear has not disappeared. Horror films use the full moon as a symbol of terror. Writers describe it as an omen. Artists paint it as a wound in the sky. People still step outside, look up at a red eclipse, and feel unease deep in their stomachs. They may know the science, they may know the shadow is only the earth itself, but the fear remains. Knowledge has not erased Psychologists speak of collective memory, of archetypes carried through generations. The moon is one of these. It is a shape that carries meaning even when the original cause is forgotten. We inherit not only genes, but also patterns of imagination. The fear of the moon may no longer protect us from predators, but it still whispers in our myths, our stories, our symbols. It still makes our hearts beat faster when the night is too quiet, when the silver light falls too cold. Imagine standing alone on a hill tonight. The city is far away, the air is silent. The full moon rises, casting its glow across the land. You know the science, you know it is only reflection, and yet you feel watched. You feel exposed. You feel the same unease that your ancestors felt thousands of years ago. That is the legacy. The prehistoric fear still lives in you, quiet but alive, carried forward through countless generations. The fear remained, and it remains still, not in the teeth of predators or the blood of sacrifice, but in the mind, in the imagination, in the shadowed corners of our dreams. The sky remains. Through every age of humanity, from the first small bands of hunter-gatherers to the great cities of stone and glass, the moon has been above us. It has been feared, worshipped, cursed, praised, and studied. It has been a monster, a goddess, a wound, a guide. It has been the source of myths, the trigger of rituals, the clock of time. Across thousands of years, its light has never left, and so neither has our response to it. Imagine again those first humans, trembling under the blood-red eclipse. Their cries rise into the night, their drums pound against the earth. They believe the moon is dying, that the world itself is breaking. They fear that their lives will end with its light. Now imagine us today, standing on a city street. The moon rises between towers of steel, pale and perfect. We know the science, we can explain every shadow, but when an eclipse comes, crowds still gather. People still gasp. Cameras click, but hearts beat faster. The fear has softened, but it has not vanished. It lives quietly beneath knowledge, whispering through the ages. The journey of this fear tells the story of humanity itself. At first, fear was raw survival. The moon revealed predators, warned of danger, and inspired dread. Then, fear became ritual. It shaped rules, sacrifices, and laws that gave structure to tribes. Then, fear became myth. It wove itself into gods, spirits, and stories that bound cultures together. Then, fear became psychology. It echoed in words like lunacy, in dreams, in art, in the quiet unease we still feel. Through each stage, the moon remained the same, but humanity changed around it, layering fear into memory, memory into myth, myth into meaning. The moon became our mirror. In its changing face, we saw our own fragility, our own cycles of life and death. In its red glow, we saw blood. In its disappearance, we saw mortality. In its fullness, we saw both beauty and danger. Every phase was a reflection of ourselves. To look at the moon was to look at what it meant to be human, vulnerable, curious, fearful, imaginative. Fire and science dimmed the fear, but they did not erase it. Fire gave us control over darkness, but the moon still watched. Science explained its cycles, but the explanations did not strip away unease. Even astronauts who walked upon its surface described a silence that was haunting, a stillness that seemed alive. Knowledge can describe the moon, but knowledge cannot silence the echo of ancient nights. Imagine lying awake, unable to sleep, the full moon shining through your window. The room is quiet, the world outside is still. You turn, you sigh, you close your eyes, but the light presses against your lids. Something deep in you stirs, a restlessness older than words. You are not in danger, yet you feel unsettled. That feeling is the oldest inheritance. It is the voice of ancestors who survived by fearing the sky. The conclusion is not that the fear was foolish, it was wise. It kept humanity alive. It taught caution, respect, and imagination. It gave us myths that became culture, rituals that became religion, rhythms that became calendars. It shaped language, art, and memory. The fear of the moon was one of the first steps in our long journey of meaning. Without it, we might not have told stories. Without stories, we might not have become who we are. And so the moon remains, not only above us, but within us. It is in the words we speak, the myths we inherit, the unease we feel on bright nights. It is in our dreams, in our art, in the quiet knowledge that the world is larger than we can hold. The prehistoric fear still walks beside us, dressed now in beauty and wonder, but alive all the same. The sky remains. And when we look up, we still see not only the moon itself, but the long shadow of our own humanity written across its face. The silence lingers. After the fires have died, after the stories have been told, after the rituals have ended, the moon is still there. It waits above, indifferent and eternal, while humanity continues its restless journey below. The fear that once ruled entire tribes now lives as a faint echo. But echoes matter. They shape the way sound carries, the way memory holds, the way the past speaks softly into the present. The moon has always been more than a body of rock. It is a canvas onto which we have painted our deepest emotions. Fear was the first color. Wonder followed. Then came longing, sorrow, hope. The surface of the moon is unchanged, scarred and silent, but in our eyes it has shifted endlessly, becoming whatever we needed it to be. A warning, a goddess, a curse, a dream. Imagine a night thousands of years ago. A hunter looks upward after a long chase. His body is bruised, his breath heavy, his hands stained with blood. The moon stares back, calm and cold. In its roundness, he sees both judgment and solace. He believes his struggle matters, that the sky has watched, that his life is part of something larger. Now imagine a night today. A child looks through a telescope for the first time, her eyes wide as the craters sharpen into view. She too feels watched, she too feels connected. The distance of millennia changes little. The same face in the sky provokes the same awe. The echo of fear is not a weakness. It is a reminder that humanity has always lived in dialogue with the world beyond itself. We are shaped not only by the soil beneath our feet, but by the heavens above our heads. The moon taught us to imagine, to invent, to explain. Its silence forced us to fill it with voices. Its cycles gave us rhythm, its eclipses gave us drama, its red glow gave us story. Without the moon, human imagination might have been slower to rise. Some scholars say that myth is memory in disguise. If that is true, then every story of the moon is a fragment of ancestral experience, carried like fossils within our culture. The monster that devours the moon is memory of an eclipse. The werewolf is memory of predators stalking in silver light. The goddess of fertility is memory of cycles tied to blood and birth. Beneath the surface of myth lies history, not written in ink or stone, but in fear and survival. And yet the echo continues into the future. Humanity has already walked upon the moon, left footprints in its dust, carried back stones to examine. The fear did not stop us. But even astronauts, armored with knowledge and technology, spoke of feelings that bordered on reverence. They described the eerie stillness, the desolate beauty, the weight of silence pressing from all sides. One called it magnificent, another called it lonely. None were indifferent. The ancient echo was still there. Imagine centuries from now. Humans may live on the moon, building shelters against its emptiness. Children may play in domes beneath its light. Adults may work the soil of its craters. Even then, the echo will remain. Perhaps they will invent new myths, not of serpents devouring the moon, but of spirits whispering in its rocks. Perhaps they will feel unease during eclipses, even when science explains every shadow. Fear will not vanish, only transform. The silence lingers because the moon itself lingers. It has been constant longer than our species has existed, and it will be constant long after we are gone. Our ancestors feared it, we wonder at it. Our descendants will inherit it. The echo will continue to shape them, not in terror, but in memory, not in panic, but in reverence. The silence lingers. And beneath the moon, humanity continues to listen, to remember, to dream.